The Jeremy Kyle Show has been taken off air after a participant died shortly after recording an episode. ITV says the show will take a break in order to conduct a review of the episode of the show in question. Joining us now is chartered psychologist Honey Lancaster-James. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us on the programme this afternoon. Programmes like this have got a duty of care to contestants, but those contestants or however you want to describe them, guests are willingly taking part.
Well, that's true. I mean, I think the first thing that we need to say is that we don't at this stage know an awful lot of detail about what's happened here. We have to sort of guess that it has something, or that there's a possibility that it has something to do with the appearance on Jeremy Kyle, or the show wouldn't be getting involved. But I think what this does reflect is that there is a kind of growing awareness, I think, among production companies that they do need to safeguard the welfare of contestants, and therefore it is appropriate and right to conduct a review into what has happened here. I think, you know, we are getting to a time where this has been in the media a lot now, and I think what we need are better regulations and better processes in place so that there is a consistency about the provision of care. I work in TV and often support production companies, and yet other production companies will enlist the services of a wide variety of different providers. And at the moment, there is no kind of standard across the board process as to what actually that care looks like and who should be providing it.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's something that I think would be good to come out of these kind of things.
Sure, I mean, it's a difficult balancing act, though, isn't it? I mean, it's also happened, as we saw, with a contestant from Love Island who sadly took their own lives just a few months ago. But these production companies can only do so much to protect people. People want to be on the telly, and so they will go ahead despite having people like you talking to them ahead of time. I did Hunted this time last year. You know, I had to speak to a psychologist, psychotherapist before I took part in the programme. You know, there are checks and balances in place, aren't there?
Yes, that's right. There are. And I think it's quite right to make that point that people want to go on television shows, and also we want to watch television shows. And so one of the things that we need to do is to kind of balance that with appropriate care and provision. And there is only so much that can be done. And I think the other thing we need to be really careful about is that we don't draw causal links where they perhaps aren't there. We are living in a time where I believe we have a national mental health crisis, where people are finding it very, very difficult to access mental health services when they need it. And just because you've been on TV doesn't make you immune to those kinds of conditions or that need for help. So one of the things that I think we have to be careful about is that we don't make this entirely an issue about television participation and contributing to TV shows, and forget that there is a wider issue here about mental health in general, and who do people turn to when they need support.
Indeed so, and it's Mental Health Awareness Week this very week, as we've been featuring on the programme today. But let me take you back to TV programmes, if I may, given that's what we've been talking about with you this afternoon.
Yeah.
What advice would you offer to those who would consider appearing on a television programme like the Jeremy Kyle Show, like Love Island, you know, where it has to be said people are manipulated?
Well, I think the first thing to do is to sort of check that the production company that you're thinking of working with, and that's what you need to think of this as. If you're thinking of appearing on a TV show, you are doing a job, you are working with a production company. Check that that production company has a process and a procedure in place to safeguard your psychological and, you know, mental well-being. And that should entail a pre-screening process. Certainly the production companies that I work with will enlist me in the first, almost really quite at the very early stages, to conduct a screening process to flag up whether anybody maybe needs further investigation into their mental well-being, or whether they're going to need some specific kind of care and support as they take part in a show. And check also what provision will there be both during filming but also after care. Are you going to be able to access support later on down the line? And the best production companies are putting in place really good and solid aftercare processes. I think there's always improvements that can be made. And one of the improvements I'd like to see is that quite a considerable time after you've been on a show, that you should be able to contact the mental health professional specifically and directly, without necessarily going back through the producers. Because one of the difficulties is that sometimes people think that producers hold the key to them getting more airtime or onto other productions and other TV shows, and they therefore hide sometimes what they're actually going through. So if they can call their provider of that psychological welfare service directly, I think that should help things going forward.
Okay, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. There is a statement actually from ITV, everyone at ITV in the Jeremy Kyle show.